Israel's membership in the OECD is important and assists Israel with its many economic and social challenges. I appreciate the cooperation between the OECD and Israel. I would like to thank the Secretary General of the OECD, my friend Mr. Angel Gurrier, and the head of division, Peter Jarrett, and senior economist Phil Hemmings for writing the OECD economic survey of Israel and submitting it to me and to the Israeli government. The professional staff at the Ministry of Finance and I will study and examine the findings and recommendations in the survey, and we will do our utmost to bring Israel to a better place for its residents while maintaining economic growth and fiscal stability. We will continue to promote the integration of the ultra-Orthodox population in the workforce of Israel. We will continue to promote, together with the Ministry of Health, a better public health system. We will continue to promote an innovation-based economy. This is our goal. This is what we're going to do. And we will continue to promote, together with the Ministry of Education, core curriculum for all, because the final conclusion system is the right way to reduce gaps in the Israeli society. I'm honored to ask Mr. Angel Gurrier, Secretary General of the OECD, to present the main points of the survey.
Officially delivered to the Minister.
Thank you.
The economic survey I'll have my own copy so that
yes.
It comes out better.
This way you won't steal mine.
In the photo, yeah?
Yes.
It's a great pleasure to be back here in Tel Aviv and presenting in this case, the third economic survey of Israel. It's actually the second one since Israel joined the OECD in September of 2010. Now, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank in particular Mr. Lapid and also Mr. German and the support of the Governor of the Central Bank, Governor Flug, for their support, which was led by the minister's team. And I'd also like to thank Peter and Phil, who are here and who are responsible not only for conducting the research, but also actually for writing the report in the case of Phil. This report is, by the way, the process is we prepare a draft, we discuss it, and then it goes and is perceived by all the 34 members of the OECD, which then analyze it, and then there's a big discussion, and then we finalize the version with all the inputs from the discussions of the 34 countries. So what you see here is not the recommendations of a group of experts or technical people, but it also has the inputs of all the members of the OECD in it, which benefit from the fact that they can look at the experiences of Israel in order to enrich their own policy options. Now, active participation of the country under review not only enhances the quality of the work, it also helps us to make our recommendations that are more relevant to the country. If you were close to the process, then what we can talk about are things that are more important to you. Why? Because you told us that this was important, and therefore that we had to address these issues. And it makes the whole work so that it kind of you're helping us help you better. And the outcome is indeed improved. With the legacy of the global financial crisis still holding back recovery in many countries, Israel's growth rates are the envy of much of the rest of the OECD. Unemployment is at record lows, inflation is under control, and your high-tech sector continues to attract admiration worldwide. Now, all the building blocks of a strong economy are present and accounted for, but it's gas production that could be the real game changer. It's that element which not only is going well or going better, but really is new in the equation. Already we expect that with the Tamar gas field coming on stream, a full percentage point will be added to GDP growth this year. So 1% more to the GDP, It's going to be 3.7%. It would have been 2.7% without the gas element, and a further 0.7% next year. So again, next year would have been 2.7, 2.8. We're saying 3.4, 3.5%. So we're going to maintain the speed that we're seeing for this year with the gas. If you use this windfall judiciously, prudently, and guard against the symptoms of Dutch disease, then that can accompany the exploitation of natural resources, gas production has the potential to underpin economic strength for years to come, while giving Israel a degree of energy independence of far-reaching. We're a full-service organization.
Yes,
Oh, you want a pen? Yeah. Get a pen. And this is... this is...
Stop talking for a second.
It's saying gas production has the potential to underpin economic strength for years, while giving Israel a degree of energy independence of very far-reaching consequences. Now, raising living standards for all Israelis. How do you get that? Economic growth, however, should be seen as a means rather than as an end. A strong economy should be like a glue. I mentioned it a while ago in the interview. A glue that helps society come together, not a filter that separates the rich from the rest. The ultimate goal is to translate growth into the highest possible living standards for the greatest number of citizens possible. And this is an area where Israel can do better. You have strong growth, but you need to make it more inclusive to tackle persistent poverty and inequality. The domestic agenda that you were talking about a moment ago, together with the security agenda, are of the essence. And of course, in the context of focusing on making sure that eventually one can have a more stable security situation in the region. 1 in 5 Israeli households is below the relative poverty threshold. And the ratio is over 1 in 2 among the Arab Israeli population and the rapidly growing Haredim community. Despite some improvement, employment rates among Arab women and ultra-Orthodox men are still far below those of the rest of the population. Now, the best way to boost employment in these groups is to make sure that they get the skills and the education they need. That means the market is demanding certain knowledge and certain skills and certain education in order to make people fit into the demands of the market. Well, this is precisely what we are suggesting. This is a practical matter. The latest PISA results, our Program for International Student Assessment, published just a few days ago, show us that Israeli students' average scores are improving across all 3 of the subjects, test of mathematics, reading, science. That's good news, but there's still a lot of room for improvement because those averages are still low, and second, the rate of improvement is relatively modest. Here the question is, what happens if we continue at this rate of improvement? Well, first of all, the other guys are not sitting in there waiting for you to catch up, you know? They are also moving, and sometimes they're moving a lot faster. And second, you already have a gap there. You have the average, just to give you an idea, the average of the 3 areas for the 15-year-old students in Israel is 474. 474, that's the average, that's the indicator. Shanghai, Singapore are closer to 600, more or less, 590, 585. Now, every 40 points is equivalent to 1 year of school. So 474 against 588 or 590, so you do the math. Huh? That means the difference is actually 2 to 3 years as if the children who are today 15-year-old had gone to school 2 or 3 years longer. Now, this is with the top of the top, okay? But this is where, of course, you want to be.
Yeah.
This is where you should aspire to be. Even with the averages, we are behind, and therefore, we can do better here. Household sense of well-being is, of course, not only influenced by income and wealth, but also by other factors. At the OECD, we're assessing these additional dimensions through our Better Life Index, which was mentioned a moment ago, which has 11 components, including indicators of subjective well-being, health status, social connection, work-life balance, civic engagement, and the quality of the environment. By the way, here, given the mandate of the Israeli government, we in the OECD, we are conducting an in-depth analysis of this well-being element, the additional things that go beyond GDP. How does this affect and how does this influence the performance of the economy and the performance of individuals? Which are the main elements, which, in a way, which are the things that are making the Israelis lose some sleep, you know? What is giving them more elements of satisfaction? This should help us in the dialogue between the government and the Israeli society. So the government knows better what the Israelis are worried about, what they are wanting to get as delivery of services. Obviously, the dialogue will be much more productive. Now, this index provides very useful pointers as to why some countries fare well and others not so well across the different areas. For example, we know that Israelis live longer than the OECD average. That means you're doing something better. But they tend to work much longer hours, whereas the productivity is not necessarily the highest, or that you are worried about the quality of air or the quality of the water because you don't find it of the necessary quality. So developing in-depth policy responses to improve well-being requires further work. But Israel is up to the challenge. In this regard, we're very pleased that the Israeli government has been the first member to ask us to participate in the project. And I think that very soon we will see a set of well-being indicators submitted each year to the parliament in advance of the budget process. So that in the budget discussion and with the Israeli public, all these indicators can be taken into consideration when the budgets are being prepared. This will give well-being a much higher priority than is the case for most other OECD countries today. And with this in mind, we look forward to contributing to this process by publishing something called House Life in Israel, question mark, you know, which we intend to deliver sometime around mid-2014. Now, in further evidence of how seriously you are taking these issues, the recently established Committee for the War on Poverty, established under the chairmanship of Eli Elaluf, is another step in the right direction. By adopting a whole-of-society approach, bringing on board a range of stakeholders, you have an important opportunity to develop a coherent policy program to tackle poverty that boasts broad ownership. This is critical. The question of ownership. Are the people in it? Do they have their minds and their hearts in it? Do they believe in it? Do they feel that they have a stake in the program rather than just seeing this is one more initiative of the government trying to, you know, put the name on the newspapers? We look forward to the committee's recommendations and to the timely implementation and to help both with the design as well as the execution of those recommendations. Now, what about some of the more macro considerations here, which is where things sometimes gain or fail? One of the most powerful policy levers at a government's disposal is the power to tax and spend in pursuit of social and economic goals. having myself been the Minister of Finance, of course, I would totally agree with this statement. Of course, governments must behave responsibly, and sound public finances are fundamental to a macroeconomic environment conducive to investment and growth. I also have to say that a macroeconomic environment that is stable and predictable is one of the most interesting magnets for foreign direct investment, not just for the economic activity of the Israelis. In this respect, Israel has reacted commendably to the fiscal speed bumps it has encountered. In fact, remember that in 2012 there was this 2% target, and it came up higher than that. And then what the government did was to say, okay, we're going to be facing this issue. The government took the necessary corrective action. Fiscal consolidation, as you know, is not easy on the citizens, particularly when living standards are under pressure. But getting the public finances on track is definitely a goal worth pursuing. So long as growth remains relatively robust, the government should stick to its budget targets for 2014, and if necessary, perhaps take further steps in 2015 and beyond. Now, if you need to raise further revenues, I'd say that, before one starts looking at increases in taxes or even reducing expenses, let's start looking at broadening the tax base, fighting avoidance, fighting tax evasion. But in any case, eventually this may not be enough, or not enough in the short term. And of course, when we're saying, okay, what can we do that suggests that this is a business-friendly, investment-friendly, job-friendly tax system, okay? And, well, I think today you have been discussing precisely that some decisions that were going to be taken about increasing taxes were put for the time being on the side, and that you were going to go for this more stimulus or more, let's say, at least not increasing the tax load, which is appropriate in our point of view in order to get the economy with more vibrancy. Now, some comments like, or some policies like the planned welfare to work program, the disability benefit reform, encouraging greater take-up of the earned income tax credit, all will help raise the living standards for ordinary Israelis. Now, let me finally, Mr. Minister, comment about the question of the alternatives here. Clearly, before you start raising the taxes or before you start cutting clearly you have to have a strong economy underpinned by a dynamic, competitive private sector. Israel's innovative high-tech sector is a world leader in many respects, continues to be the beating heart of your strong economy, but it doesn't mean your private sector is living up to its full potential. We can do even better. Healthy competition is at the root of the innovation and the productivity growth that will drive our economies forward. And this is an area where Israel is lagging behind. Competition isn't just good for growth and for competitiveness. It can also drive inclusion, spread the benefits of reform across society through greater choice and lower prices for the consumers, more jobs for the workers, and more opportunities for small business. The retail and electricity sectors are in particular need of a shake-up when it comes to competition. And because these are sectors that provide consumers with the bare essentials, in fact, with inputs for their daily life, they're also sectors through which increased competition could generate significant improvements in citizens' welfare through better choices and lower prices. So let me paraphrase Ben-Gurion, who said that to maintain the status quo will not do. More than ever, I think Israel needs a dynamic state, I quote, bent upon creation and reform. Inclusive growth is therefore an achievable goal in a country that has already achieved so much so quickly. And the idea that inclusive and growth go together, which used to be kind of considered like a contradiction, well, not only is it a contradiction, actually, they do go together, they need each other. So we look forward to continuing to work with the government, with other stakeholders, to tackle these challenges. And we hope that this survey, Mr. Minister, will allow Israel to design, promote, and implement better policies for better lives. Thank you.